So in today's video, we're going to talk about what SSH is and how to use it to connect to a remote server. So we're also going to see why SSH is important. I know that this is not a networking class, rather it's a class on Linux, but I feel like it's important for you to have an idea of what SSH is. So without taking much of your time, let's get started. So first thing first, what's the meaning of SSH? The first thing I want you to know is that SSH stands for Secure Share or Secure Socket Share. If someone comes to you and say, hey, I want you to use Secure Share or I want you to use Secure Socket Share, know that that person is talking of SSH, right? So the full meaning of SSH is Secured Share or Secured Socket Share. So what is this Secured Share we're talking about, or what is this SSH we're talking about? The first thing I want you to know about SSH is that it's a network protocol. That's the first thing. So basically SSH is a network protocol that allows two computers to communicate together over an unsecured network. And the unsecured network we're talking about in this case is the internet, right? Let's say you have a server and this server is located somewhere in the United States. And let's say you are in Africa, right? So you've created your server in the United States and you're somewhere in Africa. There are two ways you can connect to this server. The first way is you can physically go where this server is and you can plug in a keyboard and a monitor and you can connect to this server physically. That's what they call the console connect. But since you're in Africa, that's not going to happen, right? So you have to remotely connect to this server right here. So in order for you to be able to remotely connect to this server, you will need an internet connection. So you need to go through the internet, meaning that you would connect to the internet, then from the internet you will connect to that server. But here's the thing, the internet is not secure. The internet is not secure, meaning that there can be a hacker somewhere online just observing what's happening online and trying to find something interesting they can use. And when you connect to the internet that's not secured, in order to connect to your server, this hacker right here can steal your information. They can steal your username, they can steal your password, and they can even steal the IP address of your server. And they can also use that to connect to this server, and they can use the server to do crazy things. Like, for example, they can delete your entire application, or they can use it to mine Bitcoin. So there are different things that this hacker can use the server to do. So since the internet is not secure and you cannot physically go where this server is, how do you connect to this server? And that's where SSH comes in. So what SSH does is that SSH kind of secures your communication with this server. So what SSH is basically a network protocol that allows two computers to talk together. So this computer right here, we talk with this computer right here in a secured way. And the way SSH does is by encrypting this communication. So right, is by encrypting this communication. So whatever thing you're doing on this server, this guy right here cannot see, right? Thanks to SSH. Now SSH, as I said, will allow you to connect to this server, and once you connect to this server, you can do things like run commands, you can do updates, you can install software, and you can even transfer files from one server to another. So that's kind of what SSH is. It's simply a security measure for you to connect and talk to your computer without a third party seeing what you're doing. I guess you're asking yourself now, Emmanuel, how do I SSH? In order for you to SSH, there's some requirements that you must meet. The first one is you must have a server, right? That obviously makes sense. You must have a server. If you don't have a server, you cannot SSH. You must have something called an SSH client. So what is an SSH client? An SSH client is a tool or a piece of software that provides an interface for users to SSH, right? It's a tool. It's just a tool that enables SSH, right? And I'm going to show you how to use these tools in order to SSH. And there are a couple of SSH tools out there. You have PuTTY, which I'm going to show you how to use. You have OpenSSH, you have Mobile Extend, and you have a terminal if you're on Mac or Linux. So if you have a MacBook or you have a Linux computer, you can use the terminal on your Linux computer to SSH, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But if you have a Windows computer, you can use PuTTY, and I'm going to show you how to use PuTTY. Now, apart from having a server, having an SSH client, you're also going to need to know the username on the server. What's the username on this server, right? When you want to log into your Instagram account, Instagram will ask you for a username, right? So without that username, you cannot log in. It's same thing for this server. If you want to log in into this server right here, you will need to know the username of this server, right? right? What's the username of the server? Is it Ubuntu? Is it root? Is it John? Is it Emmanuel? Is it Peter? What is the username of that server? So you would need to know the username of that server. Now, apart from knowing the username of the server, you also need to know the password of that server, right? Let me ask you this question. If you have just the username of your Instagram account, can you log in? No, you also need the password. It's the same thing for this server. If you have just the username, let's say the username is Ubuntu, but you don't have the password, you won't be able to log in. So you also need to know the password. Some servers do use keys, right? If you don't have the password, you would need a key in order to log in, and I'm going to show you how to use the password and how to use the key to log in into your server. You also need something called the host name. The host name can either be an IP address or it can be a domain name, and I'm going to show you how to log in with an IP address, and I'm also going to show you how to log in with a domain name. Right now, apart from having all of these things, a server, SSH client, the username, the password, the host name, there's something that's extremely important that you will need. Remember that we said that SSH was a network protocol that allows two computers to talk together over an unsecured network, and we said that unsecured network is the internet. And the way SSH does is by encrypting the communication between these two computers so that a third-party person cannot see it. But there's also something that's extremely important in order for this to happen. A specific port has to be open on this server, and that's port 22. Port 22 must be open on this server. If port 22 is not open on this server and you have all of these things, sorry, you cannot SSH. SSH is not going to work if port 22 on this server is not open. That's why as you're learning Linux and you're launching servers on AWS to practice Linux, there's one thing I want you to do. Do not mess up with your network configurations, because if you do, you may likely shut down this port 22 without you knowing. So make sure that when you get to where it says network setting, just leave it as it is, move to the next step, launch your server, and use that server to practice Linux. So these are the things that you will need in case you want to SSH. So let's do less of the talking and let's do some demonstration. Okay, so back here on my computer, I have two servers. I have one server on this cloud provider called Linode. I think they've rebranded into Akamia, but I just love calling them Linode. And I have another server right here on AWS, right here, this server right here. So we're going to see how to SSH into this server. So the first one we're going to, see how to SSH into will be this one called Linode. Now remember I said that in case you want to SSH, you're going to need an SSH client. So without an SSH client, it's not going to work. And I said an SSH client can either be PuTTY, or you can use your terminal if you're on Mac or Windows, or you can download and install either OpenSSH or Mobile XDEM. Now for this first example, we're going to use PuTTY as our SSH client. Now remember that I'm on Mac, and PuTTY is not the ideal SSH client when you're using a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, right? But it's great for people that are on Windows. The other reason why I want to use it is because I want to show people that are on Windows how they can use PuTTY in order to SSH. And I'm also going to put links below this video so that you can go and download PuTTY and install it in case you don't have it. It's straightforward and it's easy to install. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to type, hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to type PuTTY and I will hit enter and boom. So this is PuTTY right here. Right now, the way you get access to PuTTY on a Mac is different from the way you will get access to it if you are on a Windows machine, right? On a Windows machine, you will just click on it on your desktop and it will open. But here you have to use the terminal to get access. That's why PuTTY is not the ideal solution for someone that's on Mac. So in order for us to SSH, PuTTY is going to ask us for a couple of information. The first is that they're going to ask us for a host name. Remember I said a host name can either be a domain name or it can be an IP address. Now in the case of this server, what we have here is an IP address. So I'm going to copy this IP address and I'm going to paste that IP in here. Then I'm going to hit open, and it's going to take me to a page that looks like this. So the first thing that PuTTY is going to ask me is login as. Remember I said in order for you to SSH, you must know the username of the server. So if you don't know the username of that server, you cannot SSH into that server, right? In this case, our username will be root. I'm going to hit enter. Then it's going to ask me for a password. Now, this specific example does not require a key, but rather it requires a password. Then I'm going to put in the password and I'll hit enter. Boom. As you can see, now we are inside of that server. For example, I can do a sudo app update and I hit enter. As you can see, it will start updating. So that's how you use, PuTTY to SSH into your server. It's straightforward and it's very, very simple. So if you're using a Windows computer, you can use PuTTY to SSH into your server. So I'm going to type exit to log out. Then what I want to do is I want to do the same thing, but this time I want to use a terminal. I'm not going to use PuTTY, but I'm going to use a terminal on Mac. And the way you access a terminal on your Mac is pretty simple. You come right here, then here you type terminal, you select this terminal, and this will show up, right? Let me expand this. I think this is good. So I'm going to expand this like this. Hopefully you guys can see. Expand this one more time. Okay, so on your terminal, instead of using a graphical user interface like PuTTY, where you basically just put in your IP address and you ask for a username and a password, here you have to type everything. So for here, I'm going to type SSH dash the user. In this case, the user is root. I'm going to type @ then I'll put in this IP address. I'll copy this IP and I'll put this IP in here. I'm going to hit enter. I'll say yes. Then it's going to ask me for a password. So I'm going to put a password and I'm going to hit enter right here. Boom. So as you can see, now we are inside of that Linux machine, or we're inside of that Ubuntu server. And even here I can do things like, for example, I can do cat etc/os.release and I'll hit enter, and it will basically just give me some information about the server. Like, for example, this is the version of Ubuntu that we're running, right? The operating system here is Ubuntu. Remember that Ubuntu is simply a type of Linux distribution, right? So guys, that was how to SSH using a username, an IP address, and a password. Now let's see how to SSH using a key instead of a password, right? Let me hit exit, clear my screen. And in order for us to SSH using a key instead of a password, we're going to need to use AWS. So let me quickly, so I'll go where AWS is right here. And this is the server we're going to SSH into. So I'm going to grab this server. As you can see, this is the IP address right here, right? So I'm going to copy this and I'll come back here. I'm going to do SSH. The user will be Ubuntu. I'm going to put in the password. I'll hit enter. I'm going to say yes. As you can see, this is not going to work, right? Remember when we tried to do that with Linode, it actually asked us for a password. But when we're trying to do it with AWS, it's not working because remember, our server on AWS is not configured to use a password, rather it's configured to use a key. So we have to provide that key. And in order for you to provide that key, so you need to use an option. Like, for example, I'm going to say SSH-I. I in this case is the option. I stands for identity file. Then I'm going to provide the name of the file, or the name of the key is linuxkey.pem, and I'm going to provide the user, that's Ubuntu, and I'm going to provide that IP address one more time. I'm going to grab this IP, I'm going to put that IP in here, and I'll hit enter. Now it says permission denied, right? Now the reason why it's saying permission denied is because even though I've passed this key in here, my server still cannot find this key in my current directory. So if I do, for example, LX means list, don't worry about what LX is, and I start looking around, you're not going to find that key here. Why? Because that key is right here on desktop, right? So the key is right here on my desktop. So this is the key right here on my desktop. So I can do a couple of things. I can do, for example, I can do pwd, and don't worry about what pwd is, I'll talk about it. And I can say, oh, okay, my key is on my desktop right here. The cd into desktop. Don't worry about what cd is, I'll talk about it. Hit enter. I'm going to clear my screen, clear. Don't worry about what clear is, I'll talk about it. Hit enter. Then I'll do LX. And if I look carefully, I'll see that key here. So there are two things I can can do. One is I can SSH directly from here, right? I can just SSH from here and it's going to work. Or another thing is that I can do pwd and I can copy all of this and I can go back, so I can do cd dot dot. Don't worry about what cd dot dot is. I'll talk about it. I'll hit enter, and in here I will look for that SSH command that we try to run, which is this command right here, and I will come somewhere around here and I will paste this in here and I will put a slash here. Don't worry about it. I will talk about what this is when we dive into we dive deep into Linux. Then I would then hit enter and boom. So now you can see I'm inside of that server, right? I'm inside of that server. So what I simply did here is that I told my server that, hey, go to this path right here, go to this place right here and look for that key, then use it, right? And now you can see we're inside of the server. So I'm going to exit, and if you don't want to do it that way, let me clear my screen. You can always do an ls. You find where your key is. Maybe it's on download, maybe it's on download right here, or on desktop. Then mine is on desktop. Then what you would do is you will cd to desktop, clear your screen, you do an ls, and you'll find that key here, and all you have to do is to run again that command one more time. So I'm going to run that command one more time, but using this, we don't need this. Then I will hit enter, and this time is going to work. Why? Because we are in the directory where that key is. Now let me say it again. Do not worry about what directories are. Do not worry about what all these commands I'm running are. We'll definitely talk about it. Now, as you can see, we are inside of the server, and I can do things like sudo app update, and it will start updating our server. All right, our server is up to date. So that was how to log in on an AWS instance or an AWS server using a key and an IP address. Now let's see how to log in using a domain name, right? So I'm going to exit, and to log in using a domain name is very simple. Just come here on AWS, go to connect, then come where it says SSH. Are you seeing right here? AWS provides you with the command already. So just copy this, come back here, put it in here, hit enter, and right here is the domain right here, right here is the domain. As you can see, this is not an IP address, rather this is a domain. Then hit enter, say yes, you want to log in, and boom, see, we've logged in into that server, right? And if you were not in the path where your key is, for example, let's say pwd, don't worry about cd dot dot, don't worry about what cd dot dot is. I'll clear and I will do a pwd. As you can see, we're here and we know that our key is not here, because if I do ls, you cannot find that key here. We know that our key is inside of desktop. So I'll do cd to desktop, I'll clear my screen, I'll do ls, our key is right here, I'll do pwd, and I'll copy this right here, and I will do a cd dot dot. Don't worry, I'll talk about what cd dot dot is, and I will attempt to SSH one more time, and I will come back here and I'll hit enter, and boom, as you can see, we're inside of the server, but we are not where that key is, but we're inside of the server. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about all of this. This is going to make a lot of sense, but what I want you to know is how to SSH. And right here I can do things like sudo cat etc/os.release. I'll hit enter. Sorry, this is not the right command. I'll hit enter. As you can see, it's going to provide us some information about this server as well. And I can also do things like sudo and I can switch to the root user. Don't worry, I'll talk about what sudo is. So guys, that's what SSH is, and that's how to use it to connect to your remote server. Now, I don't expect you to have a mastery of this in the beginning, but what I'm going to say is that as we progress through this Linux course, each time you're done practicing Linux, terminate your server, meaning that come here on AWS, click on this and click on where it says instance state and terminate this instance, and come, if you're using Linode, I guess you're not, but just make sure you come here and you terminate the instance as well. So I'm going to copy this, put this in here, and I'll hit delete. Cool. So make sure you delete or terminate your instances each time you're done practicing Linux. Why? Because the following day, if you want to practice Linux, you'll be forced to launch another instance. So you'll be forced to SSH into that instance, and that's going to help you to, practice how to SSH, practice how to log in into your remote machine all the time. So that's it. So guys, thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys now have a better understanding of what SSH is and how to use it. In our next video, we're going to talk about the Linux, the Linux terminal. For example, this terminal, this thing you're seeing right here, what is it? In our next video, we're going to talk about it. Thank you guys for watching. Please do not forget to like, do not forget to share, and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you in my next video. Bye.